yesterday. A wandering mare's found a better way. For just as night seems most dark, the sunrise comes to warm our heart.
Through the ashes of war, through the blood and the gore, a man once more than this world that is torn. A group that cannot just be stopped or forgot will rise to overcome all odds. And with every new day, through the parts that we play, as we push fear away and remember the ways of a man who was kind and whose words will remind. Do better.
Chapter 12, Radiation Blues. Radiation is a creeping death. You won't realize it's killing you till long after you have been exposed to too much. The U.S. Soldier's Guide to Radiation Poisoning.
Last night really did happen, didn't it? That sand dog is really going around being a giver of gifts on Heartswarming Eve? All right then. I'm glad he thinks we are good ponies. I slid the contents of the gift onto my saddlebags and joined my companions at the campfire.
Niora had been cooking, and once again it smelled delicious. He had also placed my thermos against the fire already, so that the coffee inside was heated, even if it was 3 days old.
At least I didn't have another memory rush through my sleeping mind. But I think I'd rather have a memory than feel this ragged and tired.
I plopped down and took the vegetable soup he had made.
I need to get him a spice rack if we're only going to eat canned veggies every meal.
At least they aren't talking about you eating meat anymore.
Pink car-wheeled into the view along the EFS compass at the bottom of my vision.
Touché, Pink. Touché.
I ate peacefully in the silence of the early morning, with a grateful sigh that we had good non-irradiated food. Alguacil was taking a patrol flight, Corners was cleaning weapons, Quickstitch worked on making our bandages stretch out, and Chifundo hummed a tune to himself while staring into the sky, at least as far as I could tell. I was scrolling through the files on my Pip-Book, specifically the one I had unlocked last night. It contained a list of 19 ponies, 6 griffins, 2 diamond dogs, and 5 zebras. The list only mentioned them as subjects numbers, starting with 043- and ending in a sequence. It also had their names and ages, all under the age of 13. I was subject number 043-014. I got very little detail about them beyond just the name, subject number, and experiment status. All of them except mine were either failed or pending on their status. The rest was a jumbled mess of corruption or still encrypted, and I couldn't tell where file corruption started and encryption began. Out of all of this, what was most alarming was my Pip-Book labeling me as Subject 043-014, Wandering Sunrise. Experiment status, successful.
What experiment? What had they done to me? Why?
I looked up to see my friends still working on getting up this morning. We were all moving slowly. The events of last night seemed fantastical.
Why was my experiment successful?
I chewed over the thoughts while sipping on the veggie soup Nayoda had made this morning. A big decision laid before us, and we needed to decide where we were going this morning. Now! I had to put those files aside for later and make a full examination when I had them all decrypted.
Go on, Sunrise. They look to you for direction, and if you don't say something, they will just mill around waiting on you all day.
Pink was being incredibly impatient about this. Like time was suddenly of the essence. I clicked away the files before looking up, feeling like someone was watching me extra carefully. Nayoda was giving me a look with his one eye, like he was sizing me up or expecting me to burst forth with tentacles all of a sudden. When I caught his gaze, he blushed a soft pink and looked away.
Did our strong silent zebra just blush? Was there more to him than just angry brooding? I mean, he was caroling with the best of them last night. And he does take the time to make our meals very good. I suppose maybe he isn't all bad.
Sunrise! Task at hoof! You're worse than me!
Pink clapped her hoof with each word, then threw up her legs in a T-shape of expiration, before falling backwards, and I swore the dust on the real ground kicked up when her body's impact into the imaginary ground.
All right, I'm breaking the silence. Are we going to try and get into that secret stable again? Because I have a plan.
Every pony turned their attention in my direction and stopped what they were doing. I locked eyes with each of them while I waited for Alguacil to land so I could talk in a normal voice.
Or are we going to follow that lead Chifundo has on hot cross buns?
I pushed the still steaming bowl of veggies aside as my brain went full ADD on me.
Green beans and tomato soup aren't bad, but getting old since I've had them just about every morning for the last 2 weeks.
Sunrise!
Pink sat up just enough to scream at me and twitching her eyebrow while chewing on her lip.
Well, if I am entirely honest, hot grass buns is the task promised.
Chifundo piped up first. He approached Neora and myself to stand near us. They looked at each other, and that unspoken zebra body language I would never understand passed between them. Neora gave me a curt nod at Chifundo and turned towards me to speak.
The spirit speaker is right. Hot Cross Buns is potentially in mortal danger. That stable isn't going anywhere.
Neora paused and started to reflectively put his hoof towards my mouth, but I made no indication of speaking, which stopped his hoof midair.
So long as you make sure you have the stuff you need to get into it.
Neora gave an over-exaggerated wink at me while he finished as his hoof returned to the ground.
What expression on my face is there to make a one-eyed zebra wink at me? Wait, how do I know it was a wink and not just a hard blink?
Alguacil gave a clap of his wings to catch our attention, while giving Chifundo a hard grimace.
Well, you told me you had a clue for the direction we needed to go. Where is it, Chifundo?
His talons scratched over the ground with the same destructive force his voice had on our eardrums, as he walked the rest of the way to us.
I will consult with the spirits of the land. This way we can go on as planned.
Chifundo turned and stepped carefully to avoid every single leaf, stick, and slight pebble on the ground. Once he found his spot, he began to speak rapidly and closing his eyes as he sat on his flanks with rear legs crossed. The pink-striped zebra shaman placed his two hooves together below his chin as his chant grew louder and less intelligent, while the wind around him blew like a small cyclone just in his immediate area.
What is that? Are all of you seeing that?
I asked quite bluntly. Everyone shook their heads in my direction, while our pink-striped shaman remained in his trance. I stared back at the spirit, not removing my eyes from it. Despite the appearance, it was nothing like a timber wolf of the Everfree Forest. I felt no fear from this creature. It brought a sense of calm and ease. It was so soft. There was an intelligence in its eyes, and grace in how it moved. The bark had a finish to it, and it was so much more refined than any woodwork I have ever seen. Yet, it lacked straight lines and was patterned after natural trees. It had been hoofed smooth, almost lovingly, with fine sandpaper. The mane was made of fresh leaves, attached to neatly pruned vines. The tail was made of the same vines, with all the leaves creating a beautiful rainbow of autumn. Even the eyes reminded me of liquid molasses, colored the sky blue that I remembered when the clouds were gone. Its teeth added a gleam of gemstones, formed from ages of pressurized wisdom.
You're so beautiful and alien all at once. Why have I never seen something like you before?
The creature smiled at me and flicked its mane playfully with a swift nod in my direction, and quickly turned to Chifundo.
Why have you summoned me, shaman?
The creature's voice were truly alien. It sounded like a dozen ponies all speaking at once, but even the chorus spoke as a single entity. The voice was overwhelming. It crashed over me like waves of an ocean and piercing the air until it was the only sound any pony could truly hear, drowning out the conversations of my onlooking friends.
We require a direction, O great nature's adaptation.
Chifondo replied with a low bow, placing his right forehoof over his chest. He did not leave his crossed hoof sitting position to make the bow either.
How do zebras bend that way?
The creature of bark and spirit started to turn and look at the rest of us, then back to Chifondo.
And then, is this for you, or all of them as well? I must know for my toil.
The spirit's demand was clear and concise. Its voice was by far the sweetest and most welcoming call I've ever heard, and yet it was also the most unequined echo my ears had ever listened to.
It is for the group. Please, help this noble troop.
Chifondo replied, still bowing before the tree pony. He didn't look up from the ground to speak or negotiate with this being. The tendrils of blue energy, like a faint unicorn spell, while pulsing between our pink-striped zebra and the speaking oaken entity.
Then I require a seed. I will not work for those who cannot receive us without a payment of our services.
The spirit turned to me, like it knew me, and knew I was the one to talk to. I unconsciously looked down at my pitback to read the inventory screen.
Apples have seeds. Carrot works. Wait, that works!
Even as I thought it, my tail was a step ahead of me. A potato was already held within the prehensile appendage as an offering. Chifondo stared at me in disbelief, as did the spirit. I shrugged at them both, as thought nothing were wrong.
Technically, it is a seed. If you plant it, the potato will grow.
Chifondo started to giggle, while this tree pony spirit shot a silencing glare at both of us. It took the potato from my hoof and planted it.
I am going to accept this.
The creature paused, then looked right at me with an angry glare.
This time. Because that thing you have with you is cute, even if it's deadly.
Wait, I'm deadly? Since when? What does this thing know that I don't?
While I was lost in the thought, the creature planted the potato in the ground and swept a hoof over it. With one smooth motion, the potato was covered in dirt. A moment later, the spirit made one gracefully delicate motion into the earth and pulled the potatoes free. Except the vegetable was solid navy blue now. The same blue as its eyes. That hypnotic color that both welcomes and forebodes one from approaching.
What kind of magic turns a potato blue?
The creature passed it to Chifondo, as several others sprouted out of the ground like it was some sort of magical harvest. While we all stood there flabbergasted, Chifondo gathered the potatoes and placed them into his pack.
Thank you, Spirit. I hope you appreciate our merit.
The zebra shaman took a low bow. The plant creature faced back into the ground without as much as disturbing a grain of soil.
Chifondo, I am scared to ask what I just witnessed, or where those potatoes came from, or what the—
I was cut off by Chifondo eating one of the potatoes without a second thought. My jaw was agape as he munched the raw blue potato down with the loudest, crunchiest munching racket I have ever heard. His eyes glazed over and turned blue themselves. I mean, blue as in two giant blue orbs you would expect to see on a bug or a shark. Not pony eyes, just like the blue eyes of the tree creature, as a matter of fact.
We should continue with our quest, while the spirits do not wish rest.
Chifondo declared, and started to march off west by northwest. Not quite the same way we had gone last night to get to the ranger station, but close to it. The tracks we had made in the darkness slowly diverged from our path, till within an hour they were out of sight. I began to wonder if the Hearthfire family were playing with their Hearthwarming Eve gifts, or sleeping off the feast. After seemingly fruitless hours, following Chifondo's creepy, bizarre, glowing eyes, we spotted ruined buildings in the distance. Alguacil winged down and pointed towards the horizon, while my pitbuck beeped and labeled our location as outskirts of New Las Pegasus.
This is horrific. Is this all from the mega spells?
The city buildings were blown out and heavily damaged. Once proud skyscrapers were reduced to rubble or missing floors. Several had other smaller buildings leaning against them, threatening to collapse both at once under the weight. Glass shards had been pushed out of the road by travelers or grounded into silicon dust. The road itself was cracked, destroyed, and lacked any traffic lines, all along since worn away. The worst, however, was the smell. It was even stronger than my lack of bathing in nearly a week. My barding had not left my flanks in all that time. The scent of decay, not death, mind you, but rather what a society long since gone should smell of. Mold, moss, rust, and ash all permeated the sense of smell in one foul concoction that could only be described as the decomposition of a city. In the distance, we could see a second layer of dark clouds. They were hanging lower than the constant overcast I've grown accustomed to. There was a telltale haze of rain below them, and it was headed toward us. Alguacil took flight towards them.
I'll see if I can break it up or we can clear out of our way.
He shouted back as he picked up speed. I looked to Nyota, who smiled and nodded.
Sonny, I think we should take cover just in case he fails.
Nyota had his head on a swivel, looking for somewhere to take cover.
That is one massive storm, and I don't think one griffin is going to make it go away.
Nyota, it's just rain. How bad could it be?
I replied with a shrug, as we kept following the path Chifundo led us down. Nyota, however, grabbed Chifundo and stopped us at an intersection.
Just in case, how about we take cover in here?
The zebra motioned to a shop. Well, what used to be one. I could barely make out the faded letters, but with effort it read, Applewood St. Street Donuts, in dual pastel-colored letters. The inside had 2 sitting bars in front of a large frying kitchen. Torn ruby-red cushioned stools sat out front along the several damaged tables. The old, musty, stale stench waffled from the kitchen. Not rotting food, but something long since decayed. There were 2 doors on the opposite wall. Both had big, bold black letters, employees only. Or, well, that is what their signs would have said if several letters were not missing. We took a moment to label out a place where we could relieve ourselves, as well as check for anything moving inside.
When you gotta go, you need to know where.
Quickstitch and Nyota went to watch out of the windows while Corners, Chifundo, and I gathered at the counter. Alguacil flew in with a crash and barely managed to stick his landing, his hard one-eyed glare gone. Now, an expression of exhaustion and fatigue. The griffin's visage looked sickly, and a few of his feathers fell to the floor.
I'll be back as fast as I can be. I have an idea.
He took to flight, and within minutes of the griffin vanishing from our sight, rain started pouring down. I took a few steps out, and my pickaxe started clicking slowly.
Wait, since when is rain radioactive? Oh.
I stepped back inside after the first few clicks and stood at the door, looking to the sky for any sign of our griffin. I ignored the occasional radiation tick and kept a vigil for Alguacil. I even flicked on the pitbuck light to make sure that he could find us in the rainstorm. Nyota approached and put a hoof over my shoulder.
I know you're worried about it.
My eyes turned over to the zebra, and he looked back at me with care and compassion. Pink rolled into view and leaned in with a bright eye.
Ooh.
Pink, what the hell? Is there something I should know about?
Nope, not at all.
I looked at Nyota again and gave him a tight, clingy squeeze. As I let out a sigh of worry, he had started opening up and was becoming far less jaded since Buddy had left us.
I'm just worried. My pitbuck is clicking, even from here, just outside the rainfall. He already looked like he lost a fight with a chicken-pluckmatic. Will he even be able to get back through all this? What is he doing? Why did he just take off? And why do you... I swear that I'm already familiar enough with this flavor to actually say I might be starting to enjoy hoof and mouth. Nyota brand flavor.
He'll be fine. Just have faith, son.
Nyota reassured and removed the offending hoof. With a tight squeeze, he guided me to sit next to him on the ground. Without thinking at some point, I found myself laid against his shoulder and his foreleg around my neck. The silent vigil was nice with someone staying with me. Even when I would stand up at a hopeful noise or glimmer of something in the sky, Nyota was kind enough to keep a hoof hooked over my back reassuringly. He kept his vision immediately around us, like he was a sentry to keep us safe. I just stayed focused on looking out for Alguazil. Almost 2 hours had passed before our friend returned. To the relief of our worried faces, he was wearing a solid white cloak with pink butterflies over his body. The griffin landed, and a few more feathers fell from his body. He wearily smiled, like some sort of unseen victory had been achieved at a great cost. I approached to hug him, as the clicking of my pip-buck picked up in the rain, but he stopped me with a talon to my chest. Radioactive rain dripping off of us, Alguazil ushered us all deeper inside, away from the windows and doors where the clicking stopped completely, before allowing any explanation to any pony. My friends had already started a fire, and Quickstitch looked at one of the holes in the wall.
Damn, Rain, why can't you wait till we get somewhere safe?
He demanded, while Chifundo just looked at him as though he were a mad pony. Corners were off to the side, just staring at the fire through her box. Alguazil started cleaning his gun, while I sat across from Nyota, and started to explain how my pip-book worked when Alguazil interrupted us.
I found several Ministry of Peace hazard cloaks back in all the lockers of the ranger station.
He pulled out a few more of the cloaks, like the one he was wearing. 4 in total.
These should help with the rain.
Alguazil spoke, and I looked at him with quite a lot of disdain. It bothered me, thinking that he had gone back to the ranger station and probably stole those cloaks from the kind family that had welcomed us so warmly last night. Surely their foals needed protection from the element more than we did.
Alguazil, don't run off again without telling us where you're going, okay?
I reprimanded him, staring him down just inside the doorway to the donut shop.
Kid, I don't need your permission to go do what I...
The griffin tailed off and was looking past me. Nyota was staring him down with the fiery spite of Celestia herself. Alguazil matched it with the stone-cold glare of his justice-seeking eye. I looked both left and right. My face a mask of childlike confusion and worry, not understanding why they couldn't just get along. As I turned my head to one of the other, Alguazil blinked when he caught my expression, and finally the griffin deflated.
All right. I'll let you know so you don't worry.
I growled and put a hoof forward.
And the family we left last night, surely they need these more than we do.
Alguazil hesitated for the longest moment, as his face took this contemplation in.
Yeah, maybe. But we can make it up to them later when we come back with hot cross buns.
We all moved further inside towards the warmer air. Corners moved to look at one of the employees-only doors.
Going off alone again? Hasn't she learned better yet? I'm not helping if she breaks her leg again.
I walked into the kitchen, turning away from our box pone, and called out.
Every pony have a look around. See if there's anything useful, and make sure we are alone in here.
I checked the donut fryer and saw the gelatinized grease inside.
Wait a minute. If I take this and add some wonder glue to it, boil it down into a liquid, and then put in the right amount of ammonia, I can get...
Napalm!
Pinkie Pie screamed out with glee. I glared at her, bouncing into vision along with my EFS compass.
I was going to say ANFO high explosive. I suppose if you use turpentine instead of wonder glue, you could achieve napalm as well. Wait, Pink, how in Tartarus do I know that?
Meh, reasons. Quick, get it together so you can carry it with you.
There were 3 nearby buckets, all turned upside down on the floor. I picked up one of the 10 galleon buckets and jumped back as 5 mid-sized rat roaches crawled from under it. In a flash, Neora was on them, crunching one on its sleeve to get to me. Before it could even recoil away, he had planted a hoof squarely into each and one of them and crunching them into roach smears, all except one that was nearly on top of me. As I scattered back away from it, a pink and white flash moved in the way. Chifondo slammed forward and pivoted at just the right moment to deliver a full-on apple buck that sent the last one flying towards the wall. The poor creature fell out of the last intact window that had shattered into a roach-shaped hole. In the distance, we could hear a splat over the gentle pouring of the rain outside.
Wow, Chifondo, do you always have to go for the comically insane version of everything Nyota does?
I looked at the two of them and felt myself being self-conscious as I blushed bright white. While they were staring at me with raised eyebrows, I looked away, my tail automatically cutting out chunks of the solidified grease until my blush faded and the bucket was full of industrial-graded ancient donut fry grease.
What are you going to use that for, Sonny?
Neora inquired as he walked over to take the heavy bucket away from me. I winced a bit at the name,
Funny.
but let it slide for now.
I can use it to make explosives. Something much more potent than the dynamite and grenades I have.
I explained, and then smiled at them with the cutest expression I could muster.
Thanks for carrying it for me.
Neora just smirked and attached it to his saddlebag by the handle. The peaceful moment was shattered by corners, letting out a squeal of dismay combined with a slamming door as she rushed towards us.
What in the hells?
Neora called out as Alguazil flew past us, carrying a chair that looked like it was made of some hard plastic stone. We approached to see the griffin borrowing one of the employees' only doors. There was an unechoing growling at the other side of the door. The growling shook me to the core as I recognized it from somewhere. With another roar, my pippa clicked rapidly, and I felt tingling in my face and chest. A green wave of smoke rushed through the air around us, and then dissipated quickly.
Radiation? What?
Corners, you done went and ticked off a glowing one!
Alguazil shouted as we all looked at the door in shock. The banging was getting louder and faster. The door was shuddering under the creature's relentless assault. I wasn't sure if it was my fear or if I was truly seeing the door splinter in front of my eyes.
What is a glowing one?
My question made everyone look back and realize that this was day number 33 out of the stable for me.
It's a ghoul, kid. One that has absorbed enough radiation to become a generator of it themselves. Get cover.
Neora ordered, as there was a stillness in the air of the shop, as if waiting for the next incoming blast of radiation. I grabbed the environmental cloak that Alguazil had come back with and threw it over myself. When Corners approached, she lifted the box and motioned me inside. With no other choice, I slid in and the world got darker as the two of us huddled together under the cloak. Then, everything got so much brighter when the pitback counter went crazy as another dose of radiation washed over us. My upper left side of the EFS showed a moment we were all still taking 10 rats a second. For just 2 or 3 seconds though. I could feel the unnatural tingle in my face, even as my stomach churned with the sensation of a boiling pot.
Okay, enough of this.
I got out from under the box and walked up to the door as a pony hoof exploded through it. I could see the decayed green glowing remains of a ghoul on the other side and its frantic effort to punch through to us. My tail offered up a steel-shaped apple grenade as well as a cookie from the present we got last night. I placed the cookie into its hoof first, and that yanked through. There was the sound of munching greedily of it before the hoof returned covered in radioactive slobber. My pippa kept clicking and I started to feel sick, like I wanted to puke when I pulled the stem of the apple and put it in his hoof. The ghoul yanked it back through the door, making the hole even larger. I stared for a moment, before my brain started picking up one and one together with the click of my pippa.
Every pony get to cover!
I dashed like mad and dove behind the counter of the shop, putting it between me and the door, as Neora, Chifondo, Quickstitch, and Alguazil joined me. Morbid curiosity drove me to keep peeking up over the counter, as I felt an environmental cloak draped over me. I needed to confirm whatever it was dead. My eyes watched as the ear-ringing blast finally went off. The door flew into splinters, while the chair landed behind us, smoking but intact. As green smoke washed over us, the clicking of my pip-buck amplified to a fever pitch. EFS registered 25 rats a second. All of my companions were following Quickstitch out of the door at a breakneck speed. I stared at the chair for a few moments. The clicking of my pip-buck telling me I needed to flee as the green miasma slowly encroached across the room. Bits of ghoul could be seen inside the gas, on the floor, and dripping from the ceiling?
He said put them down if they were feral. That was feral. This chair survived that explosion? Could it be made from?
Stubbornite! Sunrise, grab the chair and run! It will come in handy!
Pink shouted at the top of her lungs. I grabbed the chair and my tail secured it to my flank while I bolted to catch up with my friends. We were in the rain now. Even through the Ministry environmental cloak, I could feel the tingles rolling over me. The glowing one had washed me in radioactive waste, and now I was taking a rad shower. It didn't take long for me to go from upset stomach to blurry vision. I wasn't sure if it was the rain on the visor helmet or... Suddenly, I hurled up everything that was still left in my stomach from breakfast. My hooves were getting weak. Nyora hooked a hoof under me just so I could keep walking.
Sunrise, stay up. We'll find shelter soon.
He smoothed it as Alguacil tried another building door and found it barricaded as well. No matter where we turned, we couldn't find shelter from the rain. Each and every building was either buttoned up tight or a bombed-out shell that did nothing to save us from the elements. The chair banged off my barding plate with each step, and I could barely stand on my hooves as my pack started to feel twice and then thrice times their weight. Nyora took them from me and distributed their weight to every pony else. He wrapped the cloak tight around me and then took his own off as I looked down to find my whole coat had gone from bright emerald to a sickly sludged color. Even my hooves tipped in white had changed to the color of sewage. I started to speak back and smile at him, only to cough up blood on the pavement. My eyes watered, and I could feel the tingling of radiation wasn't just on my skin anymore. My insides were protesting against it. The pony on my pip-buck looked sick, and at the rat counter indicated that I had reached advanced poisoning levels.
Great. Almost getting to the lethal levels of this. I already feel like I could fall on the ground and stop now.
Nyota wiped the blood from my mouth and throat and looked at me with concern while making sure his eye checked both of mine. Not only was I coughing up my liquefied insides, but my blood was significantly thinner. Now, I couldn't get the taste out of my mouth.
Radiation poisoning tastes distinctly worse than zebra hoof, as a side note.
Quickstitch, Sunrise isn't looking so good. What do we do?
He asked. As the medical pony turned around, Quickstitch's horn glowed, and we shared gazes as he touched it to my forehead. He pushed my visor out of the way and used his hooves to open up my eyes. The olive-colored stallion took out a medical bottle marked Rad X and handed me 2 pills.
Take this. It will slow your radiation intake.
He shook his head with concern at Nyota.
She is showing signs of going septic, and her body is severely poisoned. If I didn't know any better, I'd say she doesn't have any natural resistance like the rest of us.
Corners trotted over to us as the group stopped.
She can get into the box. It's protecting me rather nicely.
The eyes on the other side betrayed a smile back at the rest of us.
Corners, after last night, I don't think that is such a good idea. We should...
Nyota stopped talking as he looked at Alguacil beyond my narrow tunnel vision.
Alguacil? Are you...
Coming into view, our Justice Griffin looked almost as pale as I did, and his eye had a yellowing to it that made it clear he was sick. He walked past my view, and the noise of a talon on another barricaded door echoed around us through the beating red rainstorm.
Oh, fuck us. He got exposed to the rain cloud. He may have taken close to as much as I have from sticking around after that ghoul exploded. exploded, and the rain is poisoning us.
My thoughts couldn't stay coherent as I fell forward. Caught on Iota, the pressure on my stomach was enough to make me void my insides once again. Ugh, so much bile mixed with blood.
Why does puking my guts out make me feel better when I'm dying?
Who goes there?
A voice shouted at us above the gentle rainstorm.
Sunrise, move! Get forward now! Protect them!
Pink shouted in my ears. She sounded so distant. Something inside spurred, like I had to move. I bolted from Leota's grasp with strength I didn't realize I still had. I got up to the front where a spotlight shined through the rain into my eyes. A blinding light was shooting out of the structure doors, keeping only the shadows of 5 ponies armed with firearms and melee weapons. The rain-forced scrap outside the building only added to the dazzling reflection of light hitting me in the face.
Hi!
I found the strength to shout, even if drops of blood sprayed out into the rain. I could feel the radiation getting through me, cremating me. My insides were twisting. I was dying.
I'm wandering sunrise. These are my friends. This is it. If they are bad ponies, we're done.
Pink held herself on the edge, waiting to see what would happen. I hoped she was right, and I was protecting my friends.
Sunrise! Say you're the angel!
It was the only thing I had. I had to hope that DJ Pone 3 had been heard by them. There was no response forthcoming, so I stepped up close, while my friends all walked into the spotlight.
I'm the angel with a shotgun.
I found the strength to wheeze, and finally felt my legs giving out. I was on my front knees, radiation poisoning now inhibiting my higher thoughts and pushing its way into my body.
Pink, please tell me that this is gonna work.
Oh, you poor thing. Open the door. Get them in here.
Amir called down with naked concern. The large ramp dropped down and crossed the distance from the eroding road to the structure over the moat. Inside were 2 fillies armed with guns and security armor. From the shadows came an earth pony stallion, wearing in the same riot police barding and carrying a sledgehammer. It was made of rutted pig iron, and he held the grip tight in his teeth. Arches of electricity shot off into the air that touched the hammerhead. There was a significant amount of wiring wrapping around it, and a battery running at the base of the hammer. He was armed further with a pair of heavy rifles mounted onto a battle saddle at his flanks. They stood their ground. The fillies raised their rifles at us. I looked at my friends, rather confused, and they were just as confused by the half-friendly, half-hostile welcome. As the confused standoff threatening to drag on, a unicorn mare stepped between the 2 groups and stood on the ramp. She had a solid red mane and the lightest shade of gray for a coat. This was oddly matched to her burgundy-colored eyes and a heavy reinforced leather armor. She had a set of knives along her forehoofs in a tight-wrapped bandolier on her left, and on her right was another pipback, just like mine. She stood out amongst the group and had the full focus of my attention.
Well, what are you waiting for? Let's get them inside. Oh, this rain must be doing a number on them,
she ordered. The stallion snorted before lowering the mechanical sledgehammer to the ground. It echoed with a threatening electric hum as it discharged harmlessly into the concrete.
What in the name of the goddess is this?
I was interrupted by the adrenaline rush leaving my radiation-poisoned body and falling face first into the nearest mud puddle.
Okay, that's it. Rain officially sucks.
Suddenly, my connection to the ground was gone, and I was levitating towards the door.
Hey, whoa, wait a minute. I'm not dead yet, am I?
My circles were weak against the gray telekinetic shroud surrounding me. I looked up to see the unicorn's mare horn glowing and her walking through the door.
Your pony flying! Not okay! Stop! Put me down, I can walk!
I protested at the top of my lungs before coughing up another glob of my own insides, which was held by the unicorn magic long enough to splatter back into my own face.
Come the buck on. My own blood not taste awful.
Don't be silly. You, little filly, need to be taken straight to Doc Hornsaw right now.
She commanded and led us up a ramp into a waiting doctor's office. A ramp that used to be used for carriages and was a dozen ponies wide to accommodate two-way traffic. Every inch of this 4-deck complex had been utilized to build additional smaller houses inside. They were made from concrete support beams, additional concrete slabs, sky carriage panels, wooden planks, and all sorts of pieces used to make the inside of the garage into a living, breathing city. Even an old carriageway sign that had writing on it replaced with the words Town Hall. It took a minute to realize, but this ramshackle construction was once a parking garage for drawn carriages and sky carousels. These ponies had turned this once open-air structure into a mostly environmentally sealed scrap castle, complete with a massive drawbridge-like gate, and had a moat filled with radioactive water pouring onto our bodies. I was truly amazed at this Earth pony ingenuity.
All right, radiation is killing me. Make this fast.
Every pony inside was armed, from the youngest filly or colt to the oldest stallion. Each had a firearm, melee weapon, or hoof-thrown explosive. They all carried them like they knew how to use them.
Is every pony here armed?
I asked while still floating in the unicorn's wake. I was too weak now to break the hold on my body. Nor did I care at this point, as my friends were all around racing to make sure they kept up with the unicorn.
Oh, that's how we make sure no one does anything hostile or dumb. Well, every pony here is armed and knows how to use their weapon.
The mayor replied as we arrived at the door to a building marked with a trio of pink butterflies. She took us inside and put me onto an examination table. My body tensed up. Somehow, being in a hospital bed was triggering something, a memory of some sort, that made the tension ramp up inside me. I felt the memory hurling itself into the forefront of my mind, no matter how hard I tried to fight it, until finally all my sensory input was glazed over by something that had happened before. I snapped awake. This was my own body. I could recognize that immediately. Then the heavy dull pain echoed through my head. It was like the scorpion pincher slash on my throat, except this one shot down my spine. I was lying on a bed, my past self moaning in agony and struggling against the leather restraining straps keeping me on my belly. Rainbow eyes, half rainbow, half red mane, cascaded into view, then my father's face. I felt his wing coming around to gently stroke my mane while his hoof caressed my cheek.
Shh, it's okay, Sunrise. Daddy's here. They made Shadow stay outside because she's a unicorn. They let me in.
He paused for a bit and rubbed the back of my head softly. He covered my form with his wings protectively, and I felt relieved just to be this close to him. His hoof lifted my head.
I promise you're gonna be fine. The ministry agents let you into a stable-tech hospital.
My host felt like I did when the memory came up. Sick, tingling all over, except I could tell the difference in radiation poisoning and being pumped full of drugs.
Why, Sunrise? Why did you have to try to sneak in? You know, since the ministry came in, that what I've been working on was top secret, especially at night.
My dad fretted like a mare over her first newborn. I swear, he was certainly the take care of daddy's little girl type.
This must have hurt him so much. To see me, his little blank flank being taken from him, and he was only allowed to watch while they poked, prodded, and tortured me. Oh no. This is that memory. The ministry is going to...
Suddenly, my father was pulled away from my side. His foreleg looked so strange to me now, as his hoof slid away from me. His white coat against my white coat. No pip-buck on that leg. It was like a piece of my innocence was being yanked away from me unwillingly. Several doctors in lab coats surrounded me and started taking blood pressure, pulse, cut a piece of my mane and tail away. They were placing little bits of me into various sealed containers. Mane, tail, coat, even probably a full pint of blood. And all 3 physicians ran out as fast as they had arrived. I looked over to my father across the clean room. So clean, it creeped me out, having spent so much time in the dirt of the wasteland.
Dad, please, no, leave! I don't care if this is a memory. Chifundo! Quick stitch! Even this crazy mare that carried me in here, somebody! Bank! Anybody, please! Make my father leave, please! No!
The pristine lighting in the room suddenly went out, and I knew what was coming next. 2 unicorns along with a Pegasi appeared, masked by shadows. The voice sent chills into my spine.
Hello, subject 043014. Hello, Rainbow Rise.
3 sets of hooves echoed off the floor, just out of my sight. I knew that voice, and it chilled me to the bone.
We thought you should know that even if Stable Tech is protecting you, we can still touch you if we want to.
My head turned to see the shadow of 9, along with 2 unicorn shadows against the bright light of the hospital outside the door. Rainbow Rise rose to his hooves and snapped his wings hard. He slammed down between me and the 3 pony shadows.
Leave my daughter alone. I agreed to continue work on your project. Just leave my family alone!
He snorted hard and then struggled against the 2 magical envelopes wrapped around him. All I could do was watch as the telekinesis slammed my father away from me into a wall without making a single sound. He hit the ground and tried to struggle to move to his hooves.
For an engineering genius, you really are a feather-brained pony. You would relegate yourself to working in a mechanic shop? Your expertise is going to win us the war.
The mare paused as I saw a knife come out and gleam in the lights coming from the hallway.
But this little filly's defiance must be punished to ensure that such a transgression against the Ministry of Morale will not go without consequence. 71 and 88. You 2 can make sure that anything I do here won't scar or leave this blank flank. Got it?
9 questioned as she took several hoof steps towards my restrained body. My body snapped and thrashed against the leather restraints. They groaned in protest, but refusing to give as the memory played out. Much to my horror, I tried to scream, only to find no voice and see a magical field around my nose and mane.
Oh, little 14. You would think we would let some pony hear you scream. No, I'm sure that 71 has that handled.
9 turned her head to the still dull magical glowing horn, which nodded to the mare to proceed. The knife mercilessly dug into my foreleg and cut from hoof all the way up to my shoulder. My scream echoed helplessly in my mind. With nowhere else to go, I was trapped with 9 and her sadistic skilled knife. We were locked away in silence as my father was forced to watch his daughter be tormented. The agony was worse than anything the wasteland had done to me yet. 9 moved the knife in a way that made it strike additional nerves and turned the blade at just the right places to make the jagged cut hurt even more. She struck the bone a few times as well. Her precision found just the right spots for cutting into the hardened calcium. My eyes rolled back into my head only for brief moments, before the pain would calm down just enough that I wouldn't lose consciousness. The only sound in the room was the groan of the leather straps, the cutting of the knife, and the creaking of the bed springs. Every time she altered the knife's direction, the bed creaked and reminded me I couldn't scream. Every creak made my father flinch and cringe. Every time a spring protested against the knife or my flinching, it drove the pain home. My ears immediately associated that sound, the sound of bed springs, with that pain of that knife. It was why I kept the barding on when I slept now. It was why I hadn't stayed in a bed unless someone else moved me to it.
This pain. It's too real. Please, Dad, look away. Dear goddesses, why? This was never supposed to be something I relived. Why? Why was this mare so determined to make me hurt? Please, any pony, wake me up! I'll even talk to Pink and consider a bit reasonable, just not what comes next.
The memory continued. The agonizing pain was blinding white. My eyes barely hold on to any vision at all, except for my father's face. His hooves frantically beating against the force field that separated us. His wings flapping back to make him impact soundlessly with his whole body against the shield. I could make out his voice as a distant echo through the pain.
Sunrise! Hang on. I'll get you out of there. Just hang on, little wanderer.
I could see the tears in his eyes. The remorse in his voice clung to my heart like a dagger. I held back my tears. I wasn't about to give Nine the satisfaction of seeing me cry. The knife ripped through, and I gasped for air. I watched as blood poured from my leg at the pace I knew would kill me without medical attention. So much red life gushed from the wound that even as my vision came back from the pain, it went blurry again as I got lightheaded. The stallion figure approached me, and his horn glowed soft black. My foreleg healed right before my eyes. The only indication that I had been injured was the pool of blood that soaked the white hospital sheets. I gasped, and I heard my ragged voice as the tears in my eyes demanded to be let go. And I refused. I opened my eyes further to keep the tears in. As I looked to my father, he brought his hoofs down onto the shield over and over again, the glove of it starting to crack, but it still remained up.
Remember this, Rainbow Rise.
Nine said, and I saw a red tongue pushing out of the edge of the shadows, licking the blood from the knife.
You sick, twisted bitch! You were the first pony I wanted to truly hurt. I swear, if I find you're still alive, I will make it 10 times worse than what I felt here.
We can get to you or your family anytime. Even if Stable Tech says we can't remove them anymore, we can always get to them. They may survive with a few additional scars that you won't ever be able to see.
Nine finished what she was saying, and the shield dropped. In a flash, all 3 pony figures were gone, and the light came back up. My father buried his face into my mane and bawled like a wounded colt as he held me tight.
Sunrise, I'm so sorry. If I'd known what I was getting into, I wouldn't have. Please, can you ever forgive me? Please, little Philly.
He begged and begged, but all I could do was watching the memory. I felt his wings coming around, acting as a living blankets to shield me from the world. But all my past self did was laying there on the bed, unresponsive and unmoving. If anything, right then and there, I wanted to hug him and hold him. But back then, before we went into the stable, I wasn't ready for anything nearly this painful. Rather than leaving the memory, though, I hung on to it, watching my father care for me. The feeling of his hoofs stroking through my mane, the smell of his greasy soaked coat against my nose, the softness of his wings warming my flanks, even the bitter warm tears in his sobbing. I held onto it, staying there as long as I could. This true bit of fatherly love was something to cling to in the hopelessness of the wasteland.
Dad, if I ever find you, I forgive you. Please, when I find you, that will be the first thing I say. Just let me find you alive, please. It's all I ask.
That was my last thought before I came crashing back into the present world.
Chapter 12. Level status. Level 5 achieved. Finally. It only took nearly dying of radiation poisoning to get this one. Oh, hey, there's that cookie I mentioned. I hope it was worth it. New perk. Hit the deck. You take half damage from explosives. This includes shockwaves, fire, and shrapnel created by anything going boom. You have a sixth sense for ducking at just the right moment to keep your eyebrows. At least you've adapted to your own blast radius. Can't say the same for your friends.
But not from how far. Our journey's so ruthless, I still bear the scars. And what matters ain't that the world saw its end, but what kind of life we will spend.
I'm trying to be better, but still miss the mark. And each time I save you, I'm left in the dark. No,
when you're in trouble, I'll be by your side. My love for you ain't gonna hide. Inside the fire keeps burning.
Still death is calling. The rivers run dry neath a blackened out sky, and all the dead trees are falling. Creatures we face will see equal judgment, our mercy or grace. Decision is needed for those who survive of whether you'll be left alive.
And all bloody work for a hope that we hold of past golden age and its story still told. And what sacred virtues we're able to heed to bring back to those who are in need.